Some names, locations and details have been changed or fictionalised to protect the identities of the living. All elements of myth and folklore remain unchanged to avoid incurring the anger of the never dying.
The folklore of the Isle of Lewis is rich and ancient. The internet and the modern world make it harder and harder to believe in fairies and spirits without being laughed at. Nowadays, when people tell stories about the Sheikhan, they try to distance themselves. They start by saying, "This is nonsense, of course." But they still tell the stories. They still follow the rules. They still secretly whisper about the one person who they swear has the sight. And they still warn their children not to be lured away by anything they may see or hear out on the moor. This is a true story, whether it happened or not.
So what happened?
Shakaneuje Dorochovan, heating her chin for some pieces. Is Hayashaka a side, Gonigig her. A Hatanic her on, Harokalan.
The Tale of Guthan Tàlaidh.
Is love real? Hanyalasam. The Isle of Lewis drifts undefended in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, an inverted comma before Scotland speaks. Most of our trees have been pulled up by the tantrum winds. Our homes stand like feuding siblings, backs turned and distant, their doors pouting. Out on the moors, they once found an old couple. They were called Shoris and Katie Helen. They'd frozen to death. There aren't many murders on the island, and this wasn't one either. To see TV, you'd think all Scottish islands were rife with weekly murders. Actually though, you can count the murders on Lewis over the past 70 years on the fingers of one hand, and you'd have fingers to spare. That doesn't mean people only ever die of old age though. Imagine a bear. Not a cute teddy bear or a cartoon bear. A real, wild bear. Bears are beautiful, but they're also savage. There aren't any bears on Lewis, but perhaps Lewis is a bear. Beautiful, but savage. Of the people who don't die of old age on Lewis, many are killed by Lewis itself. In my lifetime, there have been 2 cases of bodies being found out on the moors at a place called Eisheal. One case was Shoris and Katie Helen. The other was a young man. He was only in his early 20s. He'd just been broken up with. The reigning theory was that he tried to drown his sorrows and then wandered out into the moor and become lost. That wasn't what my mum said though. She said he was lured by Guthan Tàlaidh. What on earth are Guthan Tàlaidh? I asked. They prey on the broken-hearted. If you don't believe in love, then you're vulnerable to them. I'd been broken up with recently as well. It had been a bad breakup. I didn't understand why anyone in their right mind believe in something as childish and ridiculous as love. In my village, Cremor, the bus operates almost like a taxi. The night before you want to catch it, you call the bus driver and you tell him he'll need to come into your village on his way to Eisheal. And from Eisheal, you get another bus to Ballallan and another to Stornoway. I often saw Seoras and Katie Helen going to Eisheal on the bus together. They never spoke to each other much, but they always held hands. When they found Seoras and Katie Helen, they didn't look afraid. Katie Helen was lying beside Seoras, with her head against his chest. His arm was around her shoulder. It hadn't been like that with the boy they found. They said he'd looked terrified. Eisheal's a funny place. Not a village, just a bus stop really. At night, people see things at Eisheal. Lights on the moor. Often, drivers pull over into the passing places to let what they assumed was an oncoming car past them, only to find there's no oncoming car at all. Solace of the Moji. Lights on the moor. A few days after the boy died, I was waiting for the bus at Eisheal. It's only 3 miles from Cremore to the bus stop there, so I decided that rather than get 3 buses, I'd get 2 buses and a bit of exercise. As I stood at the bus stop, my mind kept going back to him, the boy. I kept wondering what his last minutes had been like. A voice from one of the other sections of the bus stop, hidden behind the thick stone walls. I'm not. I'm just waiting for the bus. I hadn't realised there was anyone else there. Spoke the man. Oh, who is that? Stop messing around. Hig chimigilin shona makin. Hamiguri usa aiken. It was a creepy thing to say, sleazy even. But somehow, I felt charmed. You come here. Hig chimihil in sho na makin. I was curious. I wanted to see who the man was, but something stopped me. I kept wondering what the boy's last minutes had been like. The bus pulled around the curve of the road. Hig chimihil in sho nam aiken. I wanted to go to him. I got on the bus. I sat at the back. I looked out of the window towards the bus stop. There was no one there. On the day Seoras and Katie Helen were found, the report in the local newspaper noted something strange. Katie Helen had broken her hip. The police best guess was that she'd fallen in the dark as they were walking home. But Seoras had no breaks and no bruises. He was completely unscathed. Seoras was an old man. I can imagine him, there in the dark, trying to move his wife to warmth and safety, and realising it hurt her too much. I can imagine him considering going as quickly as he could down the dark road towards the nearest house, knowing that he couldn't run like he did when he was young. I can imagine him realising that if he left her, then she might have to spend the end of her life scared and on her own. And knowing that once she was gone, he'd be on his own too. Is love real? Can you listen? But I can see Seoras so clearly as he decides not to try and get to the next house. He lies next to his wife, just as they had every night for decades. He puts his arm around her. He kisses her, gently, on the forehead.